Focuses on the debate over strict lockdown rules for the elderly. The British Medical Association is arguing for restrictions to be relaxed for healthy people over 70. Really, we're going to move to the Sunday Times. The main story, set free healthy over 70s, say doctors. Nigel Nelson, this is the British Medical Association, the Royal College of GPs, saying there is such a thing as healthy over 70s and they do deserve not to be discriminated against.
Yes, that's right. At the moment they're being shielded and they've been told they've got to spend 3 months behind locked doors. And now there's a suggestion, well, hang on a second, why should they? If they're perfectly fit, why could they not come out earlier? And obviously the theme at the moment is actually how lockdown will be eased. But we got a hint today at the number 10 press conference from the Deputy Chief Medical Officer, Jenny Harris, when she was saying that they've discovered, for instance, that anti-arthritis drugs may have a positive effect on COVID-19. So in the event there was someone being shielded and they were on these drugs, there is a chance they might have a bit of protection. They don't know yet, but it's something that is showing some promising results. But at the moment, you've got both the British Medical Association and the Royal College of GPs saying there are other things to be considered here, like the mental health of people who are locked up for quite so long. And perhaps it's time now to start thinking about which ones could actually come out.
Joe Phillips, it is an interesting point. 2 months ago, everyone, of course, without knowing much, wanted to protect the over 70s, but a lot of over 70s have said, we are not dead yet. We are active members of society and deserve to be treated as such.
Absolutely, and, if there was a blanket ban on people over 20, there'd be absolute uproar. I mean, it's an arbitrary figure, 70, and somebody of 75 or 80, could be healthier and fitter and more useful and valuable, for instance, helping out with grandchildren and things like that, than somebody who's, got underlying health problems who's only in their 30s or 40s. I mean, the BMA said it's discriminatory and it's unacceptable to have this blanket ban. And I think, we've heard people like Dame Joan Bakewell, who I think is 87, or something like that. There are an awful lot of people who are extremely fit and active and healthy and perfectly sensible. You can trust them to not go, screaming around and gathering for long distance ramblings and things like that. I mean, it just seems to me that if we're going to remove any sort of lockdown, we need to look at the ability of people to deal with an easing of restrictions, and just to say, oh, you don't count because you're 70. I think also there's a nuance here, James, as well, which we have seen so starkly illustrated by the horror that is happening in our care homes, that we cannot have this attitude towards elderly people. What is elderly? Does it start at 70? Does it start at 80, 90? Look at Captain, now Colonel Tom Moore. So I think this is a very, very important point.
Everyone understands what a terrible virus the coronavirus is and its threat to so many people. When the restrictions first came in and they mentioned the over 70s and those with underlying health conditions should not go out very much or should get people to do their shopping, I was incensed. First of all, there are many, many healthy people over 70 and over 80. It should never have been said on a question of just age. I always said it was discrimination, although a lot of people disagreed with me. But it's common sense, it's discrimination. And the other thing that was really bad about it is not to talk about people not seeing their grandchildren or anything. A simple way to do it would have been to say all people who live alone should spend their hour walking with a friend if they wanted to, as long as they kept 6 feet apart. A lot of these people some people I know haven't even seen anyone to talk to for 6 weeks, which is a disgrace. Also, they're discriminating against, they've always said they were discriminating against the over 70s, but they're also, by putting them in lockdown, they're depriving them of daylight. And everybody knows that daylight actually increases your immune system, boosts it. So by keeping these people in, they've actually lessened their well-being, mentally and physically. Personally, I haven't had anybody in my house for 6 weeks and I've abided by the rules, but I go do my own shopping and I do other people's shopping, and why not? And also, I've spoken to people from over 6 feet away, and I've walked with a friend a couple of times more than 6 feet away. And that should have been encouraged. It shouldn't have been for people to think, oh, I shouldn't do this. Well, I never ever in my life followed rules blindly anyway. If there's no sense, I'm not following it. And I'm certainly not staying in my house for months on end when there's nothing wrong with me. I haven't seen a doctor for years and I don't have any underlying health problems. So I never followed that stupidity. So let's hope now when the government look at easing the restrictions, they make this change. Anybody living alone should be able to spend their walk. It shouldn't have to be with someone in their own household, as long as the person is 6 feet away. Those with people who already have people in their household, they're not isolated really. They've got company all day and all night. It might be hoped that somebody like Extinction Rebellion, Friends of the Earth, the Green Party, and other really interested people in the environment and in democracy would step up to the mark. Friends of Wigmore Park have 2,500 members on their site. And every time I do a film, I always ask, can anybody help? But so far, nobody has. I'm the only one who films the meetings, and help is really needed. Thank you. Luton recently signed a climate emergency. What a farce. Words are cheap, but where is the action? They're now planning to started felling many hundreds of trees along Vauxhall Way. This is running beside the proposed dual carriageway they already had in mind. Only Luton would have a dual carriageway which went to either end to a normal road. Where is the traffic supposed to go? But this is Luton. David Franks, the Lib Dem leader, at a meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 19th of December 2019, held them up to ridicule and asked where was it going. Please have a look at that film. You'll see the quality of people in Luton Council and how they just ignore everybody. David did prevent it getting agreed that night. However, it went through to executive and then to full council on January 13 when they passed it. They hold consultations, and that's just a waste of our money. Could anybody help? Luton Council has spent millions over the years, borrowed at our expense. They have to pay for it. Borrowed millions for the airport. Luton Airport is owned by Luton Council. So there are no checks and balances. And now apparently they're writing to the government cap in hand, asking for money. Well, I hope they don't get it. Boris Johnson and his government deserve great credit for all the effort they've put in over the last few weeks, couple of months. This was a completely unknown virus a few months ago. Nobody had all the PPE equipment. Nobody worked harder than Boris and his government to set up the Nightingale hospitals to protect the NHS. They built them in a week or so. It was amazing. They've got all the ventilators that were needed. And they deserve credit for trying as hard as anybody could possibly have done. It's very churlish of the Labour Party to snipe. What would they have done? Wishing Boris Johnson and his new son and his fiancée every happiness and the best of health forever.